Welcome to the FileMaker DevCast with Portage Bay Solutions. We are a Claris Platinum partner and a group of FileMaker certified developers. You'll be listening to one of our regular dev meetings, where we gather to discuss various program topics primarily related to Claris FileMaker. These meetings are an opportunity for us to connect with each other, to share our insights and experiences, to learn, and to hone our craft. We're honored that you've chosen to spend this time with us, and we hope you'll learn and grow right along with our team. If you have any thoughts on what you hear, please do share your feedback.
It's time for the DevCast. It's brought to you by Portage Bay Solutions, where we talk about everything developer related and just frankly nerd out on FileMaker and low code development, which I find cool. I'm Dan Smiley. I'm your citizen developer, which means I'm the dumb one in the group. And we have John Newhoff, owner of Portage Bay, our lead developer. John, how are you doing this morning?
Doing great. Glad I don't have to be outside in the foggy, rainy Seattle weather this morning.
Better that than California and all the flooding. And Zandon Frogier, one of the lead developers. Good morning, Zandon.
Hey, good morning.
We have Joe Rand. Joe, welcome to the program.
Morning.
Jacob Carr, master developer. I love that work you're doing on our AIS app. How are you today?
Good.
And Brad Stanford, also on the lead developer team.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to see all of you. I've been working with you guys for a while, since, well, John, what's it been? Since maybe it's 2010. No, 2013, maybe. 2013. And we've done a bunch of apps together. And I think you used to let me come into your developer meetings in the past, but I think sharing these developer meetings with the broader development community is going to be really beneficial to everybody. I'm looking forward to you solving some of my problems myself. And the topic for today, which everybody's talking about, I just saw an article on the Wall Street Journal about it this morning, is Chat GPT. Everybody's talking. Maybe we'll start with Zandon. What is Chat GPT, and frankly, why should we care?
So Chat GPT is a AI software that's able to generate naturally spoken language and chat. And it's been refined with training using machine learning and neural net to do an incredible job of mimicking conversation and creating stories and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then anything that uses, language. So it can write code, it can translate code, it can translate language. It's just incredible. It's really
so.
incredible.
Is this Terminator level yet? Are we there yet?
We're so close. You can write a program to let Chat GPT program itself. So yes, we are pretty close.
I don't know if I like that.
I wonder why he just didn't call it Sky.
So Brad Stanford, are you not a fan of AI?
Oh, I don't know. I've seen this movie before. We've all seen these movies where it goes out of control, and Elon Musk himself is warning us, hey, you got to be super careful with this. And one of our discussions has been, well, at what point do you let AI turn things into reality? At what point do you let it touch things? If it can make things, isn't that the end? I mean, isn't now it can make itself? Now it can replicate whatever it wants. It can create whatever it wants. And I've seen the chat with the one AI that was talking about destroying humanity, so that makes me a little worried.
Well, that's the solution to climate change, isn't it? Right? If you tell AI, how do you fix climate change? And AI goes, well, the problem seems to be human beings and their manipulation of the atmosphere. Eliminate humans, problem solved. That is actually an answer to the question that was posed, right?
Yeah, it's one answer. Yeah, but the problem is we need it to know that if you start firing the weakest member of the band, eventually you become the weakest member of the band. And we need it to know that if it's using resources to get rid of humans and to create, then it's the same problem as humans.
Well, what about using Asimov's rules of robotics?
Yeah.
Right? Anybody an Asimov fan here?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I managed to find 2 relatively rare hardback Asimovs at Powell's Books yesterday.
Nice.
Of short stories. I also bought a whole stack of Poul Anderson and browsed the Philip K. Dick's. And this topic makes me think of the original title for what we now call Blade Runner, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? At what point are they conscious? I think that's Brad Stanford's question, right? At what point are they conscious?
Yeah, how do we measure that? We can't even answer that for ourselves yet. It's been a long question.
Right. What is conscience? What is sentience?
I think we're a long way between positronic brains and what we have with Chat GPT.
But I used it this morning just as a test. I said, write me a startup script for FileMaker for a multi-tenant application. And sure as crap, it did a great job. I mean, if you guys looked at it, you might go, yeah, that's not quite right. But you get the idea, and you could tweak it, and it's, the coding process is iterative, right? So what a great place to start. And it would have taken me as a citizen developer hours or maybe even days of thought and research to get to that point. And now I've got this script that I can start with, which is really cool.
Yeah, and take it a step further. You can, if you run into any issues with your script, you can pop those back in, explain the issue, and it'll self-correct. So it gets better as an assistant to help you implement the code that it wrote.
But at what point does it take my job away from me?
Yeah, well, one could say the same about the locomotion engine and the car. And I mean, it's a tool. It's still a tool.
Yeah, there are a bunch of buggy whip makers from the 1800s going, watch out, it's coming.
Yeah.
You're going to get replaced. Your job's going away, and we still have jobs.
And the kid who used to run ahead of the buggy with the lantern, so people knew you were coming, right?
Yeah.
Lantern boy.
His job's gone, but
That's
hey,
right.
we still have light. We've got street lights now, so it's okay.
I think
Joe Rand, what are your thoughts on Chat GPT? Have you used it for coding yet?
I haven't used it for coding, so I tend to, I look at things a little bit more broadly in that I like the examples that it spits out, but I haven't found a way to work it into any sort of workflow. I like the fact that, I feel like I'm a developer that's constantly learning. And if I can learn from some of the examples that it's spitting out, that's winning in itself. On the other side of that coin, I know too many bad developers to trust the general open developer community for a AI based on their indexed code to write code for me. So
I know. Ask Kate how patient she's had to be with me. The first time we get an app and I'm like, yeah, I'd like full access. And she's like, no, you can't have full access. No, really, I want full access. And eventually they gave me full access, and they were quite kind. It's like an aunt talking to the little nephew, right? It's like, okay, we'll give you full access.
If we have to, I guess.
If we promise not to do too much, right?
yeah.
So,
Well, that's an interesting thing, because it also brings up the fact that it's not a done project. You can actually take it and retrain it to match code specific that you want it to follow. And so you can retrain the model to work with code exactly the way that you want it to. And it'll take all of its background knowledge and add your little secret sauce in there, and then do the things that you want it to do the way you want it to do it. So it's pretty profound.
So if you wanted to, I mean, obviously this would be a big endeavor, but if you wanted to, you could spend a bunch of time training it in the style of Portage Bay, and then you could tell it, write me a multi-tenant startup script in the style of Portage Bay, and you'd get a lot closer to what you would want than just doing it randomly.
Yes, exactly.
So how do you go about doing that training? So walk me through this. So I wrote this script, and now I want to train it to do it slightly differently. What do I do?
So there's some tools. You can set up an environment on your own machine. There's some cloud resources to do it. You basically take the original model, and then you run some training data, and you input the training, whether it's images or text or whatever you're going to train, whatever model it is you're going to train it on. It would be the same for object recognition, or so if you're doing like Midjourney art, you can train
copy and paste code just directly into it and say, here's a good example.
Well, the training model is the GPT-3 neural engine. So that's what they're based on. So Chat GPT is actually based on that neural engine. So that's the model you would train.
Yeah.
So you look up, right now, and that's the one for programming.
Till it rewrites itself, of course.
Yeah. Well, they iterate. We'll have a better iteration. So right now it's based on so many billions of lines of text and images. Text, I guess, and so on and so forth. And then the next one's supposed to be trillions, and then we'll just be going to the next phase, and then you can train it, and you're just basically adjusting the weighting of the that neural net and the way that it's funneling information through the machine learning model or the neural net model. So I'm kind of loosely using those words, like I'm pretending to know exactly what they mean. but it's still, it's magic. It's wizards.
I'll play my own devil's advocate for a moment. I mean, as database guys, this is the kind of stuff we've imagined for years. Whether it was consciously we sat down and thought about it, or got the notion that, we are collecting all of this data. We are collecting tons of information about existence and thought and activities, and because we're in it every day and we're thinking about how do we use a client's data to accomplish what they're wanting to accomplish in the shortest amount of time, we have this idea that, yes, let's combine this stuff and be faster and better than what we've ever been before. But it also, on the flip side, has that we have this grandiose idea of what it could be, but there's this underlining human element. It's our data. It's our flaws that are already in the data and in the system. And so those are going to be coming back out in our face when we think we've put in these perfect ones and zeros, and it's more than that. There's a lot of every human thought that we've ever had is out there to be collected by AI and used. So currently in my mind, there's no real filter, just like we all disagree on what, like a word morality. What does morality mean? Well, if we don't know, AI doesn't know, because it's using our information to figure it out. So it can't be any better than us, right? Yeah. And so our flaws are going to come out in the code, like we were talking. If I get a sample of code, it'll have our flaws in it. If I say how do I train a puppy, it will have whatever flaws we have in that methodology coming out. So that's a huge consideration. Whether you're trying to harvest code or harvest a new way of living. I think that nobody has the answer, which makes it fun, right?
Yeah. Well, it just all comes down to training. You want to train it the right way. So and then, but at the same time, you want to give it, expand it a little bit, and then let it kind of go crazy. And I don't know, that it's just very fascinating.
John's idea about a company being able to influence AI with its own atmosphere, its own flavor, that I hadn't thought about that before. That's interesting to me. That's a neat idea.
Yeah, actually, there's other companies that are like based on the Chat GPT-3 model that are the neural engine that backs it. Like GitHub has a Copilot, which is a pair programming AI assistant. And then there's Tab9, which is another one of those. And they build local models within a team. And then you can basically train these models locally within your team's organization. And as they build code together, the AI assistant is essentially figuring out how the team style is. So when you're writing, you're kind of reflecting the team style as you're writing your scripts.
But that's a local engine. That's not part of the.
So it's actually cloud-based and local. So you can create a local memory storage area where it would be team-based, and then that could also be reflected in the cloud. But you need to collect the data locally right on the developer so you understand how they work, and then it's the same for everybody else in the team.
And it's the same with most of the models. And it's good to use them in a shared environment, but you supply your training data, and the more training data, the better. And then you have your validation data, and then your final test data. And it's just a matter of coming up with that sort of training data that it really makes it do profound things. And so in image recognition or object recognition, imagine going through a frame by several different frames of a picture of people in a plaza, and you want it to recognize people. You go around and draw little boxes around all the little people, and you do that, a few hundred times until you have a pretty good training set of data. You feed it into the training model and let it train, and then test to see if it's able to recognize and find those items or those people or objects out of the end at the end. And that's sort of the process is the same for text, is the same for music, is the same for any of them. Is you're just sort of selecting the training data, saying this is what it looks like, same as you would a baby. You'd say, here's a triangle, here's a square, here's and it kind of goes, okay, and it asks, and it holds up a circle, and you go and you don't say anything, and you say, here's a triangle, and you rotate the triangle, and you show it a square, and it holds up the circle, and you say no, and pretty soon it's like, okay, I'm not going to throw out a circle anymore.
Have you seen the experiment with the robotic arm? Excuse me, where they have a huge bank of data that it's recorded, but if they turn off all the data about how to use the motors, and all they give it is basic information on how to send voltage to the motors, and then give it one job. We want you to grab this thing, right? So it's got 3 fingers in the arm, and it'll go zoop, zoop, and it just keeps going and learning until it actually grabs the thing that it's supposed to grab. And it was a very early experiment on how to build this collection of data. So, but what's interesting is it was an actual physical machine. It wasn't just data. It was testing XYZ axes on these motors, recording that was incorrect, going back to position 1, and then trying it again. And that's essentially what's happening with data right now, is that AI is having it like a child, like you said, to try. Is this your correct answer? Is this the correct answer? So who's saying, yes, that's the correct answer? That's an interesting place for us.
Well, is that why they've released this in the way that they have? Because, now people like you, me, we're using it, and we're giving it new data. I mean, terabytes, whatever's bigger than terabytes of data. I mean, like every second, we're just feeding this thing in a way that they probably couldn't themselves, right?
Yeah.
And so you're kind of crowdsourcing the birth of this child.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time in my life I've ever heard that sentence.
I got it from Chat GPT.
Yeah. We do. We crowdsource training of our children, though, in schools.
Yeah.
So,
are there other models other than Chat GPT? I mean, we're only talking about Chat GPT, but this is not the only one of these kind of models out there. Can any of you give me another example?
I use one on my phone quite regularly called Seek, and it's an AI machine learning engine for identifying plants. So you point it at a plant, and it uses its database. I think Seek has a more controlled learning process than ChatGPT. I think Seek has a backup team of, and this is my speculation, I don't really know, But I think that they imagine they have a backup team of plant biologists that points the camera at a rhododendron and tells Seek that's a rhododendron and this is the exact species. But then someone like me points Seek at a rhododendron and it looks at its machine learning database and uses its AI to say, I think that's a such and such a species of rhododendron. And it's pretty amazing how often it's right. You know, I can be out on a hike in the North Cascades and point it at a plant in some random gully that I've never seen before, and it'll come up and tell me what the plant name is quite often, not all the time.
And isn't that the kind of stuff we want, like we've wanted forever?
Oh, it's great.
It's like Shazam for music, right? Kind
of like augmented reality in a way.
Yeah.
It's great. I have a similar app that does the same kind of thing for bird songs. And another app called Peak Finder that does sort of the same kind of thing for the horizon. You know, you point the phone at the horizon and it'll try to tell you the names of the peaks.
That's cool.
It's super cool.
So what we're looking for is the tricorder from Star Trek, right?
That's it.
Are there life forms present? Right? It's scanning for everything. Right. We don't quite have it yet. So Jacob Carr, you're talking about where we go to train this, what the back end is. I mean, I've just got the little browser window where I can type a question, it gives me an answer. But is there another interface that the nerd crowd can go to where we get a little more control?
So GPT-3 is the model. It's a neural network. So to write to it, I mean, it's available. It's open source, so you can get it on GitHub actually, and you can get a sample of the model in its current state. So you can train. Yes, yeah. So it's available to people. People are building. I mean, there's mock-ups. You could actually build your own Chat GPT locally on your own machine if you wanted to, instead of the hosted. No, I have not. No.
Well, that sounds like a great project. You should do that and tell us how it goes.
Yeah, and it's not that difficult. Building it, the process isn't really that difficult. You're just taking a model that's already been created and you're putting it in the pieces and letting it, and then adding some additional training to it. And there's online tools that help so that because some of the limitations are going to be your GPU that you have on your computer if you're pulling it local, and how much time it takes to compute some of the testing, or training of the data. But there's solutions all over the place for being able to do that in the cloud. Google Colab is one, and with Google Colab, you can also check out different resources that already have basically the environment set up, so that they make it easier to train. And then if you're working collaboratively with other people, there's other solutions that allow you to share training data and access those using Google Colab or whatever it is that you're using to train with. And especially in the fashion of like object tracking, one of those is it's Universal. I'll put the name in the chat, but it's basically a place where people can put all of their training images, and other people who are working on object recognition or vision training, like is used for the plant app that John was talking about, as well as the bird sounds. You can put that in there, and so somebody's combed through a bunch of images, selected the exact area of whatever it is you're looking for, and identified it. So they've gone through with hundreds of pictures of a plant from different angles and different lighting, and selected the plant, and that helps it train to be able to recognize that from other images, in the instance of the plant app that John was talking about. And you just do that and share that training data, and then anybody can use it. And once you've trained it into the model, then you can take that version of it with that training added and expand on it further and do other libraries. So you could change it, on lilies, and then you could train it on other types of house plants and all sorts of stuff. So it doesn't take a ridiculous amount of time. It's just basically kind of going through and massaging that training data, just like you were teaching a child. You have to teach it some of the things that you want it to be able to identify. The difference is, of course, it's really good at being able to understand it as it gets smarter.
So what prevents this entire thing? And this is going to sound oversimplified, but bear with me. What is it? How do we keep it from being trolled, controlled, where a group of people decide, you know what, we're going to redefine what elephant is in AI, and so that everybody that gets an elephant result sees a lamp instead. You know, how is this a thing where the crowd is so big it doesn't matter? Is it impossible to take control of it? How do you see this working out?
I think all you have to do is look at Wikipedia to know that the crowd can definitely be fooled. But like for Seek anyway, I don't think it's crowdsourced. I think it's plant biologist sourced. So it probably varies from engine to engine. I don't know about Chat GPT exactly.
What about implementing it into solutions? Is there an API available for Chat GPT? Sandon?
So I haven't played with that part at all. I haven't worried about trying to pull it local and run it, or use a different app that works with some of the 3.0 version. Jacob, have you played with that at all?
No, I haven't. I know that it has an API that you can communicate with it, but I don't know how that functions or what the purpose would be. I guess since it's returning text, like you're just going to support the text returned from the AI assistant.
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't looked into
when
it.
I was playing around with it just a little bit. I had it, you start with the simple stuff. When I came to the FileMaker implementation, with FileMaker, you can't exactly copy text into a script editor. So I started asking it, can you build me a XML, output of the same script, that kind of stuff. Wasn't quite there, but with some massaging, putting it into a text editor and saving it as XML, I could get it into a somewhat readable form that I could copy and paste scripts and small objects into things. So there is some massaging needed to get that to a workable point. But when I was doing the JavaScript implementation, that's basically plain text. So I could have it build. I had it build a really simple like a timer module, and it got pretty dang close right off the bat. And I was able to paste it directly into VS Code and work with it much more than I could FileMaker script. So there is a lot of opportunities to use it for other frameworks. So yeah, getting it into a workable state so you can implement it into a workflow. I think that's a key component in just having it be more of a tool.
Well, being old and living through the Google revolution, it's kind of like saying, what are you going to use that for? When if you're a month into Google's birth and you're looking at it, go, oh, that's neat, I can find things faster. That doesn't come anywhere close to what we use it for now, right? And so now we're trying to imagine, we've been horse and buggy all our lives, and now we have a car. And we're trying to imagine how that's going to change things. Ooh, I can get to grandma's in 2 minutes rather than, 2 hours. No, it's going to be a lot more than that. It's going to be a lot more than that. And using the API to ask GPT chat or Chat GPT anything that you want, holy cow. If you can get that answer back, that right there is secret sauce, right? If my business can get an answer or a plan faster than your business, that's some secret sauce. So whoever harnesses that first wins in the marketplace, at least for a little bit, until everybody else figures it out.
Yeah, that's kind of the popular question with programmers like are using it for JavaScript and stuff. Is ChatGPT more reliable than doing a Google search? Right? Is this going to replace Google for common programmer questions? Right? Instead of like hunting through Stack Overflow for the solution you're looking for and reading all the comments, it kind of removes all the garbage, right? So
I think definitely the short answer there is it already has.
Yeah.
It just needs to be and they've got IDE implementations, so it's just a matter of time before it's going to help. I think if you were like a really good developer and you always wrote your pseudocode before you started anything, you would be like so far ahead of the curve. I mean, I don't know what developers, of course, don't write pseudocode, but if you used your pseudocode as prompts, you pretty much, I mean, you're basically writing software at that point, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be right. It can just point you in the right direction and give you things that you haven't thought about yet. Where if I'm starting a script and I get 75% through it and get to that point where I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, I got to put that factor in at the beginning. It already predicts that. It says, hey, by the way, when you get to the end of this, you're going to need this, so capture that up front. I'm way ahead, right? Secret sauce.
Yeah.
Well, let's share a screen and take a look at the script that it wrote for me, and you guys can tell me what you think, and then let's ask it some questions and show the audience what's happening with that. So let me just jump up here. I think I can share. John, am I allowed to share? There we go. Move this out of my way so that I can see it. So again, what I asked it was to write a script for, let's scroll up here. We'll get the what I asked. Write a startup FileMaker script for a multi-tenant application. Can you guys see that on the screen? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Let's start with this first if statement. If you were going to write that, so if is empty, get account name, show custom dialog, error. What do you think?
I have an
Jacob?
Sorry.
Jacob, you're on mute. That is the phrase of 2022.
That's so
Sorry
2022.
You're on mute.
My bad. The first section, I probably wouldn't include this. I would handle it in a variable and then move it along the script. But this is just like a straight exit condition, I guess. It worked. It would work, but it wouldn't be how I would write it.
Sandon?
I think it's a great starting point. And then like there's different nuances that are specific to different developers as to how they would do it. And like Jacob's saying, having an exit script in multiple places in there may not be beneficial, but it all depends on how you like to write your code. As far as what it's doing a great job of first checking to make sure that you're going to have a valid account name in order to start processing information on it. And so it's great. It's got code comments in there to let you know what it's doing along the way. It's pretty straightforward. It's not really obtuse. Sometimes you get code from another developer and you'll have like one variable that sets like 50 different parameters, and you're combing through to try and understand like their naming convention and everything. Its naming convention is really straightforward, follows a pretty good nomenclature. So yeah, just a real quick glance at it, I think this is pretty solid.
Look what else it did, which I thought was pretty cool. If I scroll down here, it actually gave me a description separate from the code of what its intent was, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
And including that with your code when when you're copying your Chat GPT to do your job. Excuse me. So that people know what Chat GPT was trying to do. Well, it wrote your code.
Let's try another example. Somebody give me a question here. So say write FileMaker script.
Hey, let's do the standard one. To create an invoice with line items.
Create an invoice with line items. Let's see what she does here. Here we go.
I do appreciate the Tron-like interface as it feeds back. That's a nice nostalgic feeling. It just needs to say end of line when it gets done.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't begin with, do you want to play a game?
Thermonuclear war.
Always a great game to play. So what do you think? There it is. Create an invoice. It comments at the front, right? It's commenting every section of the script for you. And again, at the bottom of it's still writing below this to tell me what this script's performed actions are supposed to be. A little plain language to tell me what it is that it did. Here's your script. Now let me explain it to you, which I thought was, I don't know.
Yeah.
Above and beyond. What do you think?
So this reminds me that chat is one of the words in the title here. And whenever we as developers go back and forth, hey, I have this idea, here's how I would do it. Oh, have you thought about this? This is that same process without another developer. This developer is saying, here's my idea for doing this script. What do you see? What do you think? Oh, here's how I would tweak that. I just had that conversation by myself with Chat GPT. So that's an interesting change. And therefore it launches those same juices in my brain of, oh, I see where the errors are. I see how I would do it differently. And now I can go do the work.
Yeah, I think as a tool, that's exactly what this is, what percentage of the work did it just do for you? Did it just do 50% of the work? Well, then as a tool, it did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Well, and then notice right at the top of the window, it now includes a button for copy code. So you don't have to try to drag and copy the code. It'll just paste it right into the clipboard. And then you can go and paste it into a notebook or something where you're trying to keep records of these things. I did the same thing for the multi-tenant app startup. I pasted it into my digital notebook so that I could go back and grab it later. I thought that was a nice feature.
My old man is saying that button should say lazy people click here, but my young man is saying, no, this is how it's going to be done. This is what's coming. And here.
Yeah. And there's some.
Let's ask it to change something. Yeah. You see something you want to change? Let's say, edit that to do X, right? So,
Zandon, the first thing I saw here was in the line items where it didn't have, a naming convention. Yeah, there's no context. How would we change that to give it context?
I think you have to, in FileMaker sense, you either have to go to a new layout, a different layout.
Yeah.
And transfer it over, right?
So,
or you need to reference Portal.
So it's more seeding the question. Then you're going to have to tell it and create line items by going to a new layout or some sort of phraseology.
Oh, I think actually, if you just you might be able to get it to repair it. But you also, I think, when you're working with these different AIs that are interpreting text, is you'll start to recognize a way of wording your question to account for the way that the nuances that it's going to output. So
gotcha.
You would probably want it to create an invoice in the invoice table and then create items in a line items table that are related to the invoice and so on and so forth, and give it some more definition, and then it does a really good job of doing it.
Look at that.
To Joe's point earlier, how did you convert this to XML that can actually be pasted into FileMaker?
You basically just have to tell it to write XML, with certain requirements. And it's like I said, it wasn't getting very close at all, but you can massage it into a text editor and then save it as XML. And it's still very clunky, but it's like more time to do that than to actually use the Chat GPT interface.
But a given
be to train Chat GPT to be able to create proper FileMaker.
Yes. Yeah, that's
right.
the thing.
Yeah.
So a given FileMaker house, say Portage Bay, could spend some time training the XML output to be exactly what we want it to be, so that this is our new secret sauce tool, right? We go here, we write code, we get the XML out, and we worry about the fine points of editing that properly once it's in the window.
Well, I think you just need an IDE with a FileMaker plugin, and then, excuse me, where you can put the code into the IDE and let it generate for copying and pasting directly into your script.
Gotcha.
Basically, it needs the XSLT to generate the XML, so we'd have to write that part.
Yeah, but you can already write FileMaker scripts in an IDE, and then you just copy and paste it directly into the script editor, right?
Yeah, that's possible.
It takes care of formatting it for you. So that's a small step. I wonder, here's the other question. How long until FileMaker would implement an assistant in FileMaker to help you write scripts?
How about a little paper clip? A little paper clip that has thought bubbles?
I'd be facetious, but yeah.
That'd be a genius low code move, right?
The funny thing is,
I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I think Chat GPT might actually provide you a program that can allow you to insert the code into FileMaker faster than the developers can, any FileMaker developers can actually rewrite the software to accommodate it. It's changing so fast that, it's where's this going to be in a year from now? Where's it going to be in just 3 months? And where's it going to be 5 years from now? At this level of being able to replicate code, when it gets, trained more efficiently and becomes way better at its job. I mean, it's like a temp worker we just brought in and we're like, hey, can you do this for me? And it's like, it's getting it, 80% to 90% of the way. And so suddenly we're like, oh, shoes up on the desk, but
hey, we've heard that before.
After
they told us in the 80s when we got all these computers to do our work for us, we'd all be playing golf,
Yeah.
And that hasn't happened yet. There ain't going to be no feet up on the desk.
They also said we were going to go paperless, and I got plenty of paper around here.
Can you hold the phone up to it and find out what kind of tree it came from yet? Is that possible?
No, I probably don't want to know either.
Is it recycled or not?
So as we wrap up for today, are there any closing comments? John, are you going to use Chat GPT in your coding going forward?
I don't know. I don't do as much coding as I used to. I think as a company, we can't not look at it and understand how best to utilize it. So we'll definitely be looking at it more. And I think these discussions we've been having have had me looking at some other areas where machine learning and AI, where we're not currently using it very much. And I want to explore more. Shannon was showing us the other day some image generating AIs. I definitely want to take a closer look at those. So it's like, I don't know what it's like. I'm not going to be able to come up with a good comparison, but I don't know. It's like desktop publishing 25 years ago. Depending on the industry you're in, if you're not exploring it and implementing it, you're making a big mistake. You're missing out on a big technology, and I feel like this is that kind of thing.
Well, your competitors are going to use it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Oh. Jacob Carr, how are you using it?
Currently I'm not actually, but I'm using the engine, the GPT-3 engine with tab 9. So it's a IDE AI assistant. So it's basically for chat completion, but not Chat GPT at the moment. So, but I'm curious. So something to play around with.
Brad Stanford, are you using it? Have you tried it in your actual coding? Is this going to replace FileMaker developers?
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. I'm an armchair philosopher, so I've thought about, is this going to replace developers? I really don't think so. I think there's something to the human experience and experience in general that, ChatGPT doesn't know when it's wrong. We do. And so that need is still going to be there. And there's going to be a brand new skill set that comes out using ChatGPT that's going to require experts as well. So this is, as with all history, it's going to be blurry. It's going to be messy. It'll be some fun if you know how to have fun in those kinds of times. And And so I'll definitely use this for outlining projects and for trying to look into the future and see what I need to be thinking about to make certain pieces of code work. Absolutely, I'm going to be looking into it and using it. So we'll see how that turns out.
Joe Rand, what are your thoughts on implementing Chat GPT in the coding world?
Well, I've already liked how it's reformatted my ideas on just simple things like structuring my CSS and formatting things a little bit differently. So I do like the ability to learn from it. Am I going to use it in my daily workflow? Not yet, but I imagine it'll get there.
Shannon Froger, this was kind of your baby.
Yeah, I'm already using it. I'm using it for all kinds of stuff. I've been with the different AIs. I mean, this isn't just Chat GPT, but Chat GPT is really incredible where it's at. So it's a tool. I think the best thing is going to be people being able to adapt and utilize it as a tool, and they're going to get so much benefit out of it. But I'm excited to see where it's going. We're still, again, always on the edge of the iceberg. This thing's huge, and it's just going to make things so much more fun and efficient for all of us.
That's great. Well, thank you all for taking the time to let the public come into your weekly developer meeting. And we'll come back with a new topic for next week. So until then, you all go get back to work.
Thank you for spending your time with us at the FileMaker DevCast today. We hope you found something useful, something thought-provoking, and something to take into your own development approach. Things that help you to be more productive and to allow you and your team to get more done in less time. Find us online at portagebay.com and filemakerdevcast.com, and also on social media at FM DevCast and Portage Bay. Let us know if we can help you or your company with modernizing your approaches and streamlining your workflow. We look forward to seeing you at the next DevCast.